Sunny Indianapolis, site of the Big Ten championship game. Number 1, Oregon, and number 3, Penn State. The fans are starting to trickle in. We've seen them around town just a little bit of green, little bit of blue, and they are all here for one reason. That is to fill up Lucas Oil Stadium for this big-time matchup on Saturday night. Back here inside the stadium, I'm joined by Danny Cannell, Tom Fernelli, Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson. Cover 3 crew all together. So, elsewhere on Saturday night, there will be the ACC championship game where, like here, there is a conference newcomer competing for the title. That is SMU. Now, SMU is in a precarious position, though, Danny, because it has been suggested, and I think that should and will are two different questions when it comes to if SMU loses. So let's go with the will. If SMU loses, do you think that SMU will be outside of the college football playoff?
I think it depends.
Okay.
What is the score?
Great.
What does the game look like,
Yeah.
right? If they get boat raced, I mean, we say boat race, like if they get blown out, it's obvious they won't be in. Where it gets tricky is if it's 10, 14 points, and it's close for a half, and then Clemson pulls away. That's where I would be very nervous. And I think that's why the commissioner of the ACC, Jim Phillips, why Rhett Lashley and others are really campaigning, saying, no, this is wrong, because, yes, even if they get beat bad, it's better than what Notre Dame is doing, or Tennessee, or Indiana are doing, which is sitting home with their feet up on the couch, watching them play. So, unfortunately, I think if they lose in a close game, I think they'll get in. I think they'll advance. But if they win, obviously they have it in their own destiny. But right. I think it matters what the score is.
Yeah, I do think that there is somewhat of a concerted effort on the committee's part to not punish losers of conference championship games too much. But you kind of have, two different people you have to serve here. One is you don't want to punish teams for losing the SEC or the ACC championship, but you also have the SEC looming. And I don't know if the SEC is going to be very happy if Alabama gets left out and they've only got 3 teams in this 12-team field. And when you feel like you look at the SEC and the Big Ten, they are the 2 power conferences for a reason. They have the bigger leagues. They have the most power when it comes to putting this thing together. So it is an interesting spot. I'm not really sure what this committee is going to do because we haven't been in this situation before. In previous years, it's been a 4-team field. In the 12-team, I don't know how they're going to act. This year, I feel like they have not cared as much about strength of schedule as they have in previous years when putting the field together. They're more looking at your wins and who you've beaten more than anything. So if SMU's 11-2 and it didn't get blown out by Clemson in the title game and its the only other loss was to a ranked BYU team, I think they might leave them in.
I think I agree with you. Really, I think they're going to care about the loser of the Big Ten title game and the SEC title game. I don't know that they give a damn about the loser of the ACC championship game or the Big 12 or any of the G5 stuff. One argument I am interested in, though, is can SMU spin it to say, hey, we are a much different team from when we lost to BYU because now we have gone to Kevin Jennings at quarterback, and after that, we took off. Like we beat Louisville at their place. Obviously, Louisville losing to Stanford, hurts their strength of schedule argument a little bit. But to me, it's like we weren't that good of a team with Stone. With Jennings, we've beaten everybody in our conference, obviously. So maybe that can get them over the hump. I think if they show the ability to play with a team in playoff consideration like Clemson, they don't get blown out. They're probably going to get in. But after what happened to the ACC last year, I don't know how you can feel real comfortable with that.
Yeah, what's crazy is we're talking about all this, and they're favored. Yeah. Like, we're all like, well, what if they lose? They are favored in this game.
I think the reason that we're saying what if they lose is the nightmares for ACC fans. Like I mentioned to you, if they took a 13-0 conference champion and bumped him out for Alabama, then what do you think they're going to do to an 11-2 not conference champion who, by the way, isn't even like a national championship winning Florida State program time slot champs? I mean, like, come on. Like this, if you want to throw on the tinfoil hat and go total CFP anon, then, like, I don't know. This to me looks like SMU is playing for its playoff lives because you mentioned the different ways to spin it. You mentioned the different ways to politic it. And I don't like that that's what this has become, where you ask your conference commissioner to be out there on the campaign trail. I would rather this be decided on the field, not necessarily in hits on your local sports channel, though CBS Sports HQ, obviously, phenomenal sports channel. But what about the should? Do you think that the should is SMU should be fine? Do you believe in the argument that, Tom, do you believe in the argument that Rhett Lashley says, which is, what if something happens to our team and we can't play? You know, what if all of a sudden we're just sitting here as a one-loss team, like like Indiana? You know, we're just here and we don't play in the game. It's a forfeit and we're in the playoff. Do you think that is fair?
I don't think it's unfair. I don't know how fair it is. This is my problem with this format, is that in previous years, you were arguing between elite teams, and there never typically were 5 elite teams, so it's easier to come to a 4-team field. Now we're left at the point where we're arguing between a team that's lost 3 games and a team that's lost 2 games. Everybody's got flaws. Everybody has things that they're good at. You can look at Alabama and say they lost by 21 to Oklahoma. There's no reason for them to be in this field.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm at, too. It's like
And
Alabama.
They lost to Vanderbilt. They got 2 bad
Hey,
losses.
no,
we don't
Vanderbilt is
punish
a
teams
good
for losing
loss.
to Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt is a very good loss. No, but the Oklahoma one is like, just don't lose that game.
And it's so you kind of lose, your ability to, I feel like, to be too mad about it. Because if you would have just beaten Oklahoma, Alabama doesn't have any problems right now. They're in the field, I think, no matter what happens in the ACC championship game. But I think if I am on the committee, and I know a lot of people in Tuscaloosa are feeling the same way, I'm rooting really hard for SMU on Saturday because it makes it easier for everybody involved, and it gets
I want it to be hard on them. And I will disagree once again. This year, there aren't any elite teams. Even Oregon, I think they might be the only one without a blemish, but Ohio State, we thought they were going to be a team that was going to be playing here in Indianapolis. They lose to Michigan. That's like a shock of the season. Everybody has blemishes, which is what I think makes this debate awesome. And I think it's going to be this way from the foreseeable future. So these debates are only going to get more intense every year.
Okay, so we don't know what the future is going to be in terms of the bracket, the format, but we are left with the format that we have. But have you started to look at the seeding implications? Because you mentioned you think that they're going to take care of the Big Ten loser and the SEC loser, but what about who those teams are, where they fall, and how that might impact home field, how that might impact playoff path? What do you have your eyes on in terms of that?
So as of now, I'm really confident Ohio State will host a game. I think Georgia, unless it gets blown out or if Carson Beck gets hurt or something against Texas, will host a game, even if it loses. I think Tennessee is probably on the outside looking in. The Tennessee-Ohio State matchup is a very popular one. Obviously, the Irish are going to host. Those, I think, are your 4 hosts. The loser of the Big Ten championship game, the loser of the SEC championship game, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. So I think those are your 4 home teams, depending on, obviously, who wins the conference. Now, what's interesting here is if Clemson wins, there's a chance Boise is actually the 3 seed, not the 4 seed. So a lot of folks out there who follow college football closer are like, oh, you want to be the 5 seed because you got the easy path. Not if Boise's sitting there at the 3, assuming people think Boise is a walkover, which, ask Oregon about that earlier in the season. They not necessarily were, but those are kind of things I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's really only one question. I think Penn State, if they lose, is a home team. Notre Dame will be at home. Georgia, the losers of the Big Ten and SEC will be at home. I do think there is some possibility that Tennessee could move ahead, but ahead of Ohio State and get a home game, but I don't see what would have to happen. I don't know the path for it, seeing as how they're behind them right now. So what kind of data point do you see? Maybe if, depending on their wins and losses, what happens in the Texas-Georgia game bumps something up for them in one of the metrics. But it is interesting to see how this is going to shake out and what they do based on the results of this game and these games and how much they punish these teams, if at all.
I think if Georgia loses, it'd be their 3rd loss. Tennessee only has 1. I know they lost the head-to-head, but I think that's where Tennessee's path to potentially host is. And I do think it's interesting, in that bracket we threw up, Penn State is the 5 seed. They'd be an 11.5-point favorite over Arizona State. They'd probably be similar, double-digit to Boise State, in potentially a rematch against the Oregon team they would have faced here. That 5 seed does look very attractive, but as we said, it could totally shake up if we see upsets.
If we continue the disrespect to SMU, may we? All right, so let's say Clemson wins. Who gets the 4 and who gets kicked to the 12 between the Big 12 winner and the Clemson Tigers?
I mean, I would think if Clemson wins the ACC, they'd probably still get that 4th seed over the Big 12 champion. And I think Brett Yormark knows that, the Big 12 commissioner, which is why I think Brett's been very, very vocal about what he thinks, especially when it comes to Boise State, because I think he knows that no matter what happens in the ACC, they're not going to leapfrog the ACC champion. So I think the biggest question will just be whether or not Boise State still gets one of those 4 spots. And I think they will, unless they lose, obviously.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's the committee's easiest out, is then they get Boise State loses to UNLV. UNLV probably gets that 12 seed, and then you got the Power 4 with the buys, just the way they drew it up.
If I'm the committee, I'm putting Boise in the top 4 because it's an easy thing I can point to if people bring up the antitrust concerns.
Thank you, Attorney Bud.
Hey, look at this. I mean, hey, guys, yes, we absolutely love the G5. We gave them a guaranteed, buy into the. Look at that, guys, we gave them the 3 seed. So I think they're going to get one.
Isn't this fun to talk about? College football is the best. And if you want to listen to us talk about this big, beautiful, dumb sport that we love so much, come check us out on the Cover 3 podcast. You can scan that QR code. You can watch us at youtube.com/Cover3, and you can download us wherever you get your podcasts.